Let me bang this gavel thing here. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Mr. Brennan, roll call.
Honorable Mayor Kevin Lindell.
Present.
Councilmember Jeff Morford.
Here.
Doug Shasso.
Here.
John Caper. I believe he is
I
going
believe
to be
he
late.
called and said he was going to be late, so.
Bill Garcia.
Here.
Lauren Boyette.
Here.
James Parks. And I believe he is not going to make it.
Okay, yeah, I think that's what Doug had said, so. All right. Next is public comment or audience participation for items that are not on the agenda. Anybody wish to speak tonight? Okay, then we'll move along, and next is a proclamation declaring May to be Foster Care Month. Whereas children are key to the state's future success, prosperity, and quality of life, and whereas children have the right to thrive, learn, and grow, and whereas foster parents provide the love, safety, and stability that young children need in order to overcome past traumatic experiences in order to reach their full potential, and whereas Colorado foster parents are caring for and nurturing for more than 2,000 children and youth in foster care today, and whereas we must come together as a community to recognize the important role foster parents play in caring for children who have experienced abuse and neglect, supporting family reunification, and building strong communities. And whereas there's always a need for more foster parents in order to ensure children, especially older children, children with complex needs, and siblings have a safe, stable home in their community. And whereas there are numerous individuals, nonprofit organizations, and public servants who are dedicated to raising awareness about the needs of children and youth in foster care, as well as the invaluable contribution of foster parents. Now, therefore, I, Kevin Lindell, Mayor of the City of Fort Morgan, do hereby proclaim May 2024 to be Foster Care Month in the City of Fort Morgan, Colorado. In witness whereof, I have unto accept my hand and cause the official seal of the City of Fort Morgan, Colorado, to be affixed this 21st day of May 2024. Okay, is somebody here to accept this? Oh, you're very welcome. Okay, next is presentation possible action on water and sewer rate studies by Mr. Linton.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Tonight I have in front of you the City of Fort Morgan.
Hey, Doug, talking to the microphone for the audience.
Ralph Tellis,
Thank you.
financial consultants in 23 to complete a water and wastewater financial plan, rate and plan investment fee study. The purpose of the study was to develop water and wastewater financial plans over a 10-year planning period of 2024 through 2033. That was the study period. And evaluate in 2025 water and water rates and calculated updated city water and wastewater plan investment fees. So the overall goal is to promote self-sustainability of the city's separate water and water enterprise funds. Can't read them with them out or without them. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce Andrew Ream. He'll go over the rate study. Sorry. Andrew, you ready?
Yes.
Come on up.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, council members. My name's Andrew Ream. I work with Raftelis. Let me grab this. And I've had an opportunity to lead two similar studies for the city over the past few years. So if you've been on council for a while, you may have seen me present a few years ago. This was an update of a study we completed in 2021. So a fair amount of slides, but I'm going to try and kind of go through things and certainly stop if there's questions or comments. But as Doug indicated, really just presenting the update of this study and kind of walking through the two different financial plans for each of the utilities, and then proposed 25 water and sewer rates, some survey comparisons, bill impacts, and then one-time plant investment fees. We also updated those as well, and have some comparisons as well as recommendations for consideration, and certainly discussion and questions as we go. So this is just, indicating that my firm is a registered municipal advisor, and we are looking at potential timing of future debt issuances, and certainly, within this purview, but just emphasizing and highlighting before the city enters into new debt, as the city may have done in the past, consult a financial advisor before entering the market. So we go through a process with the financial plans, and we separate water and wastewater into two separate kind of total funds, if you will, to evaluate rate setting separately, as the funds are budgeted, and different capital improvement programs. So the icon on the left kind of illustrates, we within the enterprise fund, or each individual one, we've got a series of revenues or expenses, and we're projecting that over, a 5 to 10 year period in this case. And then there's some constraints that have to do with financial policies or capital funding, some external items that get factored in, and ultimately we're projecting and looking at what the need may be to adjust rates and revenues, in this case user charge-based rates and revenues in the future. So there's certainly drivers that we often see that are identified on kind of the left bullets, but as we're been doing some presentations lately in a few different councils, and a common theme where inflation is really cutting through not just capital costs, but to some extent labor, material, supplies, whether it's on the operating side, capital, infrastructure, and then for those entities that may be borrowing, the cost to borrow. And that ends up being kind of a pretty big driver overall, just with the infrastructure that's anticipated. And in particular, the NISP assessments that include debt service, operation and maintenance, and repair and replacement kind of future requirements are certainly one of those big drivers that we've got over this financial planning period, as well as reinvesting in infrastructure, regulatory driven, some degree, some expansion related facilities, but certainly, some capital and some capital that's bunched up. So as we'll see, that's driving certainly, some of the recommendations and adjustments that are higher than what long-term inflation rates may be because of some of these drivers. So I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit, but as we evaluate these utility funds, we're really evaluating revenues to accomplish three goals. First and foremost, fund the expenses that have been identified and the requirements that we've got over time. And then we're looking to exceed two different financial performance metrics or thresholds. One of them is a debt service coverage requirement, or test or calculation, if you will. I'll talk about that in a minute. As well as the second one is more minimum cash reserve targets that we generally don't want to fall below, or kind of phase to help sort of normalize the plan year over year and add in a little bit of buffer and cushion for unexpected events. So the first one is debt service coverage, and quite simply, this is within the enterprise fund, or the separate enterprise funds. We take our revenues less our recurring operation and maintenance expenses and divide that by the annual debt service, and that yields a ratio that's defined as a debt service coverage ratio. Within the water fund, we've got outstanding debt, and we've got a legal requirement, and these are very common with revenue-backed obligations, if you will. So our legal requirement is $1.20 in revenues after O&M expenses for every dollar in debt service we have. And in terms of the financial plan for rate setting, we target a little bit higher at 1.3 or 130% to just add a little bit of cushion or flexibility both on the revenue and the expense side, that we're not kind of operating in those years that we're right at our target at that kind of margin, if you will. In terms of the second one, the cash reserves, and we look at these separately. within each fund, but we've got an operating reserve that is assessed based on the days of O&M. Water revenue is a little more variable than, say, wastewater, so it's we've got the extra month in the target. 90 days, 25% for water, 2 months, or roughly 17% for wastewater. And then we've got a second one that's really a minimum capital reserve that we, kind of, in case something happens unexpected, $1 million that we just kind of have and target for capital needs. And then there's a third reserve where if we've got debt service, kind of basically accounting for it in the end of year cash balance, the year ahead that it's due. So it's just a little bit conservative, a little bit kind of in advance. And right now that's just in the water fund. But if we're projecting some potential sewer debt over this 10-year period, then it comes into the wastewater fund as well.
I just want to ask a quick question. The capital reserve, that's maintaining $1 million in capital reserve or accumulating through the rates that you're proposing?
It's maintaining. It's like cash, kind of keeping a false floor, if you will.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to dive a bit into the water fund financial plan and focus on the outcomes and drivers. So to start, when we look at the city's water fund capital projects and we're projecting those out over a 10-year period, what's been identified over this 10-year period is approximately $31.5 million in capital across a lot of categories. And that averages about $3 million a year, but as we can see in the chart, it's not steady, it's not even, and in particular, we've got a kind of significant project identified in about the middle period that kind of stands out, a fairly significant investment. So that's one of the reasons kind of driving that annual average above kind of more of our main replacements, the recurring capital, as well as other one-time needs that have been identified. Now, this is the city's kind of capital plan. We'll talk about certainly, some of the other drivers with the NISP project that the city is also part of that's outside of this. So in kind of with capital driving, other long-term investments, including the anticipated increases through the NISP project and cost inflation, other, facilities that have been identified, we're proposing an 8% increase in 2025. Across the board rate revenue adjustments. And we're projecting out, sometimes we go out 5 years or maybe we look a little bit further, but we're looking the 10 years and showing kind of that 10-year forecast because of the significant NISP investments and costs that are hitting the city's water fund during the same time period. Kind of make sure that we're looking out a little bit further as some of those costs continue to build and accumulate. We're projecting 7% annual rate adjustments for about the 4 years after that, kind of falling down to that 6%. And in terms of kind of the why, this goes back to one of our targets and the water fund cash reserves. As we're standing today and the city's been anticipating this significant project and accruing some cash reserves in advance, we're well above our target, but in part, whether that's the construction projects identified out about 5 years, as well as kind of the accumulation of some of the cost increases overall, we're getting right down to our target in 2028, kind of driving the plan, if you will, and some of those levelized increases, as well as keeping an eye out over that second 5-year period and seeing we kind of bounce around. We've got some cost anticipated towards that end of that 10-year period as the NISP project kind of fully comes online, if you will. So being mindful of those as well and kind of liquidity requirements and building the capacity to absorb those as we get out there, subject to, updates of this plan and further evaluations. The second driver is the debt service coverage ratio, and you'll see that it stops in 2029 as we've got existing debt that is paid off or retired in that year. So really, with city debt, it ceases to be a test that we're evaluating now. The NISP requirements are kind of before in terms of order of payment. So these are all being paid, and it's just not subject to this annual debt service coverage test the same way that after we make those payments, our operation and maintenance expenses, then we look and test the city's debt service coverage requirements. And as you can see, we're well above our minimums. So as we apply and project, if the proposed and projected rate revenue adjustments are applied and implemented each year as currently projected, for a typical residential customer that uses 10,000 gallons a month with a kind of base meter size, a 3/4 inch meter, that typical bill today is just under $100, just the water portion. So as we're projecting an 8% increase, that would result in just the water side about an $8 a month increase in 2025, and kind of see again if these are implemented that range of kind of that 7 to 8, and then there's a little bit of compounding that enters into things, and so that nominal or that dollar amount impact each year gets up to about $8 or $9. Again, we're projecting out, so it's a little bit further certainly than what we're looking to take action on. I'm going to switch over to wastewater, and a little bit different of a driver. Certainly, capital is one of the significant components, and so this 10-year plan has approximately $38 million, or about $3.8 million per year, adjusted for inflation over this 10-year period. And similar to water, and a little more so, it's a little more kind of front-loaded, if you will, in terms of the annual requirements, and then flattens out somewhat towards the back end of the 10-year period, which is common, where may not have as many of those projects identified as we do up front. But the most significant kind of sets of improvements, and there's different ones, but there's several at the wastewater treatment plant around nutrient requirements and regulations that we're planning for that are coming our way, and we've been anticipating, but some of those cost increases are certainly influencing and driving the need to adjust our revenue sources. In a perfect world, we'd be able to cash fund these, and doing so would result in sharper rate adjustments. And given the kind of type of investments these are, and kind of the life cycle of these, I think it makes sense to issue some debt, as we've identified, approximately $24.5 million around those significant wastewater treatment plant improvements, and roughly a little less than 2/3 of the plan being debt funded, 1/3 being cash funded. And that really helps mitigate the rate revenue adjustments, which these are projected to be a little bit higher than what we were anticipating with some of the costs and what may be anticipated out of the treatment plant. And there's certainly some more review and updates of those costs that is underway. That could change, but based on fully funding the requirements through debt and cash, we're projecting the need for 15% annual rate revenue adjustments for 3 years in a row, and then falling back down to about 5% a year, and then further falling down to more of that sort of inflationary level. So the drivers are similar, in terms of the cost side, wrong way. But wastewater today is a bit of a smaller bill. So kind of a higher percentage, as we'll see in the bill impacts, generates less, just less revenues in total. But what we're looking at here is the end of year cash and reserves against the target. So there's a couple drivers. I mentioned it earlier. As we're projecting debt coming online in 26 or debt service in 26 and 28, this additional reserve to kind of anticipate and pre-fund next year's debt service kicks in. So today, wastewater doesn't have external debt. So as we're incorporating that becomes an additional reserve requirement. So one of the reasons why the slope's a little steeper. And rather than trying to fund that 100% right away, we're anticipating kind of phasing to that goal over the multi-year period. Again, as we're funding some expenses, don't want to kind of add on to that too much, and we get that additional reserve funded, but just doing so over a few years rather than trying to do it right as the debt's being issued. The second driver, and this ends up being a little bit more significant, is the annual debt service coverage ratio for, again, this is just the wastewater fund. It's not there today, but as projected debt comes online in 26, and then another small issue projected in 27 comes online in 28, this ends up being, we're not quite at our target, but we're kind of managing this, and this is becoming closer to our target and constraint. So we do have some additional capacity to issue some additional debt without modifying the rate increases further. But as you can kind of see, those 15% increases are sort of pulling back a bit to exceeding that debt service coverage requirement in 28, and then somewhat a levelized plan. As you can see, as we've got additional rate increases and revenue increases, that coverage gets a bit better over time. So what does this translate to? And the bigger percentage on the wastewater side, the typical residential monthly bill is about $37 today. So even though that percentage is higher, the impact or the increase would be roughly $6 a month in that first year if the 25 recommendations are implemented, and then kind of a similar, $6 to $7. These are rounded to the nearest dollar. With those additional 15% increases if those are implemented. And then things start flattening out a little bit, getting to more of that $3 to $4 range, dropping to about $2 as the percentage increases kind of tail out towards the end of this 10-year period. And while we're projecting out 10 years, as we've done, the city tends to update and evaluate these as the city should more regularly. But we're kind of looking out to make sure that, if we cut it off at 5 years or 4 years, want to make sure that we're not leaving something significant kind of around the corner, and making sure that we look out kind of long enough to get a sense of what may be in that sort of medium term, if you will. So in terms of just switching into the rates themselves, and the focus here is 2025, as I indicated earlier. So this just starts, and we've got on the water side, we've got some fixed charges that generally increase by meter size. And we've combined two of them. There's a NISP surcharge that increases by meter size, as well as a base charge. And that's what we see in that current column. Now, we're proposing to just apply that 8% increase to one of those two, and just as it stands right now, we haven't modified that separate NISP fee. So that's why you see, it's included in both sides, but it's basically for a 3/4 inch meter, it's $5 a month. That's not changing, and increases by meter size. But we can see that the base charge that is increasing, that change at the lowest meter size, about $4 a month, about a 7% increase. And just keep in mind, while we maintain the schedule through the 8 inches, more than 90% of our customers are at that 3/4 inch meter, and then more than 95% of our customers are at that 1 inch and below. So vast majority of the connections are in those smaller meter sizes.
Is that increase in addition to the water increase?
This is the water increase translated into one of the charges, the fixed fee.
All right.
And then the other component is the water volume rate. And we've got treated or potable water at $4.32 per 1,000 gallons today. Applying the proposed increase takes that up to $4.67, and the changes that are indicated there. And then just two different types of volume water rates are also being proposed to go up to that rough 8%, and there's a little bit of rounding in there. But the less significant revenue streams, but showing these volume water rates as well. Wastewater is similar, where we've got a fixed charge that increases by meter size, and then a volume rate component. So this is showing, again, 95% of our customers are 1 inch and less, and over 90% in that 3/4 inch. The almost $25 a month today, increasing to about $28.50 in that fixed charge or flat charge, or increase about $3.71, translating to that 15% increase. And then lastly, in terms of the kind of more significant set of customers, we've got two sets of volume rates, one that applies to that base meter size and one that would apply or applies to customers with 1 inch and larger, or those higher meter sizes. And again, just kind of translating that 15% increase and showing what that volume rate would be in 2025 if adopted, and what those changes sort out to be. So one of the questions we often get is, how do we compare to other utilities, facing similar issues or in the area? So this one's a little bit tricky, and we tried to find both entities that are nearby and comparable, maybe from a size standpoint, or but also other communities that are participating in one of the two Northern's sort of significant water resource projects. So what we're seeing, is the city's a little bit out front and a little bit maybe on the higher end of this survey group, but a couple of things to note that I think the wastewater charges are going to maybe start catching up a little bit as other communities are facing very similar nutrient requirements, and then certainly on the water side as well. So while we're at the higher end of the range, the range is about this 100 to 130, again, for a typical residential customer that we were looking at before, 10,000 gallons of water and 5,000 gallons of billed sewer. So these are always a little tricky, and I guess the other kind of comment, well, really two, the city's been a little bit out front anticipating a NISP, and whether it's putting in the surcharge or going back some years. And I think it's paying dividends in terms of less significant percentage increases. And I guess sort of the second part is these charts are always kind of looking in the rearview mirror, that communities will be, assessing, I don't know all of these, but certainly some of them will be looking at adjustments in 2025. So we're looking at kind of what's on the books today and comparing that to potentially what's in place for the city in 25. And just kind of real briefly, just as these stack up between water and sewer, again, these same amounts we were looking at, the combined bill is about $136 a month today. And if the projected or proposed 25 adjustments are implemented, it would tick up $16 a month. $13 a month for a typical residential customer, just under 10% when we kind of compound these two. And you can see the water and the sewer portions of those two bills. So certainly happy to take questions or double back. The last kind of section of this presentation were the one-time plant investment fees we're also asked to evaluate as part of this update. And just for those who are not familiar with these, just a bit of a reminder, these are one-time fees that are assessed to new development, essentially. Increased development, they increase their meter sizes. So these are fees that are assessed to new development, not existing customers. And the intent is to recover the impact that those new customers have on our system. And without these, we would look to other funding sources, whether they be rates, external funding sources, debt, grants, whether they're rate revenues or other types of revenues. The city does assess water and wastewater plant investment fees. Sometimes they're called TAP fees, or there's a few different kind of terminology around this one-time fee. And there's also a kind of raw water component that the city assesses as well. We focus on the infrastructure side of these, and that's where we've got the updates to both water and sewer. When we look at these types of fees, there's a few different kind of directional approaches. In one hand, we look back to facilities that we've constructed and that are in the ground and available to serve new customers, with the intent, we're trying to find the unit cost of capacity, whether it's something we've done historically or something we're needing to do as the impact or the unit cost that new development is using up. The other one's more forward-looking with a real robust capital plan, or we're kind of on the increment of expanding capacity. And the third one sort of blends the two and ends up, as it's named, the hybrid. It has both components, ends up being kind of a weighted average cost. So we looked at these and we landed in on the buy-in fee for both of these as we have in the past. And so these are also assessed by meter size. We tend to focus, at least in terms of the calculation, that base 3/4 inch meter fee is, the fee per EQR. And so as we updated this and looked at this, we identified a justifiable increase of $1,700, and then that trickles through the higher meter sizes that is updating that unit cost of capacity, basically the facilities we have today and that capacity that we built for a new customer, a new equivalent residential user. We're calculating a higher fee than is in place today. We also looked at wastewater and a similar methodology with a buy-in approach. This may be a little, certainly different soon, but much, more modest of an adjustment, about a 4% adjustment, and we're seeing that change again by meter size, and just emphasizing that most of the connections we have are in those first 2 meter sizes. And in terms of how the city's water and wastewater infrastructure plant investment fees compare to those same survey entities right now, and they're kind of bunched up right around that middle. So it's kind of a couple different waves, if you will. The city's a little bit kind of in the lower end of this survey group, and then under the calculated or what is proposed gets a little bit closer to that middle ground. And it is worthy to note that, if we were to look at water rights dedication or cash in lieu, the current sort of fees for water rights and those requirements would certainly change this comparison for, I think, just about everybody. But we wanted to focus more on the infrastructure side, at least for these 2 comparisons. But just worthy of mentioning that, water rights can certainly complicate things a little bit further in terms of these fees and comparisons. So with that, that was the kind of end of the prepared slides. Certainly happy to go back or answer questions or take comments.
Nothing's ever good with rate increases, I don't know.
I concur.
Yeah.
One thing then I would like would be a copy of his presentation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And procedurally, what we'll do is we'll just ask for a motion tonight to accept the studies that he presented tonight. We will actually bring back full resolutions of the changed rates at a different meeting, since we're not proposing any changes until 2025. We've got some time to bring those back and actually have additional discussions at that time if you want to. And so, but we'll get you a copy of his presentation and everything. Always very, grateful to have Andrew and his team help us with these. It's one of those things that, unfortunately, the day that we had our final meeting and, put the stamp on this to call it final, things changed. I mean, we're already seeing a little bit different numbers with the wastewater. We'll have a presentation, I think, at the second meeting in June about those major changes that we're going to have to make at the wastewater plant. We're also, it seems like every time we have a NIST meeting, there's something new that we're learning. Some things have gotten a little cheaper, some things have got more expensive. It's just constant roller coaster in the construction, especially the large construction world right now. And so we have to just take a snapshot and say, okay, this is what we need to do. We're going to move forward with these. We try to have Andrew and his team come back every other year and look at these. So we're constantly updating them and trying to keep those, if we do need increases, we're trying to keep those increases as minimal as we can in order to make sure that the funds can sustain themselves. And so we don't just sit on the work that Andrew's team's guys put together. We come back to them rather quickly and have them start doing it again. So.
At CML the other night, I heard several cities talking about upcoming pretty big investments in wastewater and water treatment.
Sterling, one of them. Yep.
So I'm assuming that these kinds of increases would be going into effect and changing those graphs.
Yeah,
up
and,
there.
Kevin at Sterling was referencing, they're just getting into what their financial package completely looks like. And so, yeah, Sterling's numbers will be changing dramatically
Right.
now that they know what their bonding situation is going to be with theirs. And I think he said
60 to 60, or
Yes.
60 million.
yeah, $60 million for the improvements at the wastewater facility in Sterling. Yeah, so.
You were asking for some type of motion on his presentation? I missed that.
Yeah, typically, we just ask for a motion from council tonight to just approve the studies that are done, the water and wastewater study.
So I'd entertain such a motion.
Your Honor, make a resolution accepting the proposals, is that what?
Approval.
Approval?
Approve the studies presented tonight.
Is it a
Yeah.
resolution or a motion?
It's,
Just a motion.
it can be either way. There's no financial impact with it, so it could be a motion, but we take a resolution too.
I second that.
Okay, do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay, Bill. All right, so I have a motion to approve the studies by Bill Sasha and a second by Bill Garcia. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Okay, next is presentation possible action on a request for in-kind services and fee waivers for the Morgan County Fair. Ms. Congdon?
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Switching gears here now, I'm here to present before you the community event application and in-kind application on behalf of the Morgan County Fair Board. This is in regards to the Morgan County Fair, which this year the event is going to be from the time frame of July 22nd through August 2nd. And so the fees associated for the event, which will take place at the fairgrounds, are for the 30 picnic tables over the course of 11 days and the deposit, which came to a total cost of $3,750. Based off of the past success of the event, the economic benefits to the community, and the obvious proper care of the city's equipment, it is staff's recommendation to approve this request.
Okay. Any discussion?
How are the tables delivered, or do we deliver them? Do they pick them up?
This is one of the few exceptions where we usually arrange to have those taken over to the fairgrounds for this event. Normally, the organizers have to pick those up on their own and coordinate that, but we usually work with them to have those either delivered. I'm pretty sure that they do deliver these for them.
Any other discussion? In that case, I entertain a resolution.
Your Honor, I offer a resolution to approve the in-kind services and fee waivers for Morgan County Fair as presented.
Second.
You did second? Okay. All right, so I have a resolution by John Caper, a second by Jeff Morford. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries on a unanimous vote of 6-0 with Councilmember Parks absent.
Thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you. Okay, now we get to the fun stuff. Budget calendar. So are you going to start, Mr. Nation?
Yes, okay. Let me make sure I got the right paperwork in front of me. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about tonight is the employee pay adjustments, and then we will go to revenues after that. Have a memo in your packet that Jennifer helped me put together. We try to traditionally talk about what we want to do for the employees as we start the budget process, and then work around the departments, knowing that that's the number that we're anticipating seeing for our employees. Hey, John. And so tonight, what we're proposing, after sitting down with Jennifer, what you have in your memo is we're proposing a 3% cost of living increase that would go into effect at the first pay period in January for the employees. And then we'll have a pool of money of up to 3% more for the departments to look at doing performance or merit-based increases. The one wild card in this, as you can see in my memo, is that because of my schedule and Chief Sharp's schedule, we haven't had any time in the last couple of weeks to sit down and discuss the pay proposal for the police department. So what I'm presenting tonight is just for the other departments, not including the PD. And once I have a chance to fully sit down and digest the proposal that the chief has put together, then we will come back and tell you what we're going to proceed with the PD, if that is okay with you guys. So,
Okay.
Okay.
That's fine.
okay, that's what we're proposing on that. We also, there are some adjustments we want to make to the employees on the health insurance side and all that, but that comes later in the budget calendar. And so we'll have those discussions later in the year on that, but this is just the pay increase side. So, if no questions, I will have Casey come up and start talking revenues with you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I won't go line by line unless you want me to. There's a lot of lines here. Kind of the way I approached it is I took a 3-year average of actuals, so 21 through 23 actuals, and left a lot of the items kind of flat from there. And then I put comments on anything that I adjusted differently than that. So I'll just kind of go through the highlights of anything that wasn't just basically an average. Sales tax, I did a 2% increase because every year that's the trend I've been seeing as a 2% increase, so we increased that. And then down on state grants, we are expecting a pass-through grant from DOLA for the Gateway Apartments. So we will receive it as revenue, but then we will pass it on. So we'll have an expense later on that you guys will see. So that's what that line is. So that's $2 million. That's pretty noticeable.
Yes, and we're being recommended actually through DOLA for a $4 million grant is what I found out the end of last week. Haven't had a chance to tell you that, Casey.
Okay.
And we get the interest while it's in our account. Jeff,
So
right?
I think it passes through very quickly, so I don't know if we'll have that opportunity.
The next ones we go down to is cemetery fees. I took up 25% to reflect the change that we did last year in the fees. And then the golf course snack bar, I increased a little bit just due to the grill expansion. We'll expect a little more business there. I didn't really, the capital improvement fund, I did not make any changes really there, just kind of kept everything steady. Same with conservation trust, and then the electric fund as well. So all those kind of just are staying pretty flat over what we've had in prior years. If we move on to the water fund, I have the 8% increase built in there that we just talked about for the rate study. And the gas fund, I left the same over last year. And then sewer fund, I had taken it up as a 12% increase. I think I must have saw a previous copy of this rate study. So I had 12% built in there.
We'll have her adjust that up to 15 before we do the final budget. So that's part of this process. When we find things like this, we'll make sure are adjusted properly when we do the final presentation.
Yeah. Sanitation fund I left flat. Same with perpetual care. And then on the self-insurance fund, I took our premiums up by 10%. So that's what we're expecting to do there. So no huge changes, just some small increases where we expect to see them.
Is that an expected premium rise then?
Yeah, it's my understanding is 10%.
Yes, correct.
Any questions?
So I guess each one of these is broken out. And I know each department is broken out, and I understand why. I guess for my part, I'd like to see an overall city
Like in total?
in total.
For revenues?
Consolidated for revenues.
Okay.
And then also what expenses. I mean, the revenues are great to see,
Yep.
There's
So-
also a lot of expenses, like,
Well-
like you said
So-
earlier, there's,
So Jeff,
there's a DOLA grant that's going to go in and out. So you get that as a revenue,
Right.
but really it's just as big as an expense.
Yep. So just so you know, this is just the beginning of the budget process, and we will go week by week and go through every single fund, and every single department will present expenses that go along with it. And then we will have another presentation with the total budget,
Right.
revenues and
Okay.
expenditures, and you can see everything as a
So
whole.
I think that's very important to see, and I know
Yeah.
that's maybe coming, but I definitely.
yeah, so,
Right,
yeah, typically what we do is
Mhm.
we bring in just the revenues, just to look at the revenues to see if you guys have any questions with that. And then starting at the next meeting, I think it is, you will actually see the utility funds are up first. In those meetings, we have the superintendents come in and present their actual department budgets, which is just
Okay.
their expenses. And we go through every department then, department by department over several months. That way you guys can just look at the proposed expenditures for that department and then ask questions of that actual manager. It's just
Perfect.
not asking questions of Casey or myself. You can actually ask questions of John Bain or Tony Barons about what they're planning on doing in the department. Then as we get to the end of the budget process, we then mold everything back together, everything
Okay.
that we've learned through those months. And then we do multiple presentations before final adoption of then the entire budget.
Perfect, thank you.
Any questions on revenues today?
Thank you, Casey.
Yep. Thanks.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you.
All right, consent agenda.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tonight's consent agenda includes item A, approval of the disbursements and payroll for April, and item B, approval of the minutes of the May 7th, 2024 City Council regular meeting. All matters on the consent agenda excuse me, are considered routine business by the council and will be enacted with a single motion and a single vote by roll call. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is deemed necessary, that item should be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately.
Okay, any comments, questions, or revisions? If not, I would entertain a resolution.
Your Honor, accepting the consent agenda as written.
Second.
Okay, and I have a resolution by Doug Sashow, a second by Bill Garcia, vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
All right, reports by officials and staff. Mr. Nation.
Okay, just a couple things for you. Sandy wanted me to mention next Thursday is her last in her business, her Booster Business Series out at the college. She's been having really good turnouts for those. And so that'll finish up that series. She's been having these seminars to help our local, a lot of our smaller businesses work on things. We've had somebody come in and tell them how to work with their Google presence and everything and how to set up their businesses through Google correctly. She's brought in some different marketers on how to market your business and how best to use, what you've got as your business and how, push forward. And I think this one may be Facebook or social media help and everything. And so I'm getting a good turnout for those. Reminder that Matt and the guys are already got use out at the soccer field. I saw pictures while I was out of town that the new soccer complex is getting some use. There's going to be the ribbon cutting ceremony this Saturday at 10:30. So if you'd like to come over and participate in those festivities, we would like to have you there. And other than that, I'm still playing catch up from being out of town, but I made it. So my plane wasn't delayed, so I'm glad to be here. So, and I'll talk to you more in executive session.
Okay, Chief Sharp.
I also just have a couple things. Click It or Ticket. I'm sure you've all heard of the Click It or Ticket campaign that the state's been doing for years. We used to participate in that quite a bit. We haven't done that for several years. Over the past several years, we didn't. We were so short on staff, and we were requiring staff to work overtime that we were burning people out. So we didn't do that. They did ask that we bring that back this year, so we have been doing that for the last week or two. We will continue that a little bit, so you're going to see some more traffic enforcement, trying to get people to wear their seatbelts. That's the whole idea behind that campaign. So you're going to see that picked up again here for a while. And then we started the barbecue at the Blue planning again. Just wanted to let everybody know we changed the date. Typically, it's been the second Tuesday of every month. I mean, of every August, not every month, of August. And the reason we chose the second Tuesday was National Night Out was the first Tuesday, which coincides with the council meeting, but also the fair has always traditionally been that week. This week, the fair is before that, and school starts on the second Tuesday of the month, so the school was a conflict. So we're moving it back to Wednesday, the 7th this year of August. So it is changing a little bit, so we didn't have the first day of school and then trying to do this event on the first day of school also. So I just want to throw that out there for everybody to get that on their calendar. It's coming up soon.
So with all those dates you were throwing out and everything like that, it ends up being when?
I don't remember. August 7th from 4 to 8.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody else? I would like to put out there for everybody to know that tomorrow night we're going to have a forum here in council chambers, trying to bring forth and get some ideas about homelessness and drug use and abuse in the community and everything. Lauren's going to kind of moderate that. You have anything extra, Lauren, to add about that as far as, I guess you could tell them everybody that's going to be here.
You want me to tell them everybody's going to be here?
But everybody that is going to be here.
Okay.
Like, please.
Well, in terms of council, everybody obviously is invited. It's not a official council meeting, but if you're interested in hearing any folks that come forth from your wards in the community, we will have somebody with several people with law enforcement, additionally a Homeland Security person, somebody with Centennial Mental Health to address mental and behavioral health, and Pam Hernandez to address homelessness. And am I missing anybody on that?
Senator Pelton
Yes, Senator Pelton.
and the St. Elizabeth Hospital.
2 people. Yeah, so we should have a pretty good panel in terms of addressing some of the questions that are going to be specific to those areas. The difficulty, obviously, is this is a societal, it's not a Fort Morgan problem, so people are possibly going to be posing questions that are complicated, where homelessness intersects with drug use and intersects with crime and intersects with, just mental and behavioral health issues. So we are really just trying to listen to folks. Tomorrow, it'll be a kicking off point, really. This will be available by YouTube, so people will be able to sit from home and even type in some questions for us. We're not going to have a ton of time, but we will take back everything that we do receive and then evaluate how we want to move forward. We would talk maybe about a community forum or a community panel to address certain issues. Maybe we meet quarterly, and tomorrow is kind of the kickoff for this. We see what kinds of concerns and questions are coming in from community folks, and then we look at it and see what can we do as council members to offer some solutions, at least so people don't feel like they're helpless in situation, and just inform each other so that we know what people are thinking. We can have law enforcement tell them what kinds of challenges they have when they're addressing issues. Really, it's just a starting point for us.
You said it was on YouTube. Can you advise us how to find it on?
That's a good question. I'll have to check in with our IT, unless you know.
I do know it's on our Facebook page, on our social media, the police department. I'll see if John could put that out on the city social media as well, but it is out. It is
If
out.
Nelson's streaming, it'll just be streaming on the City of Fort Morgan.
Channel. Okay,
If you type in City of Fort Morgan on YouTube.
thank you.
Okay, so 6 o'clock. So, all right. Bids, meetings, and announcements. Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Your Honor. The city is currently accepting sealed bids for the 2024 HBP paving and surface treatment projects. That's strictly for streets until 3 p.m. on May 31st. And also bids for 2024 on-call HBP paving services until 3 p.m. on May 31st. Under meetings, the Heritage Foundation is scheduled to meet on the 23rd at 4 p.m. in the museum community room. All city offices will be closed next Monday, the 27th, for the Memorial Day holiday. And the next city council regular meeting will be June 4th at 6 p.m. at the Quail Dunes Golf Course, where we will conclude a tour that starts at 4 p.m. before the meeting.
All right. Now we'll go to executive session for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and/or instructing negotiators under CRS Section 24-6-402E. And first one for water purchase, second one for economic incentives.
Mr. Mayor,
I
if
have
I-
a motion.
if I could,
Excuse me.
and I like the way you just put that, because I was going to suggest this insofar as both of these executive sessions have the same legal foundation. One is for water purchase and the other is for economic incentives. If those are both announced as part of the motion for the executive session we're going into, we could do both topics in the same executive session without having to come back, go into an open meeting, report on the first one, go through all the do-si-do, and go back into a second executive session. By the simple
What do you
expedient
think?
of what you just did.
All right. I need a
Clear
motion.
as mud.
Move, go to executive session.
Second.
We're adjourned.